All right. Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We're entering week 9, and it's for our fourth essay, our last major assignment here. It's the analyzing opposing arguments. And this is really kind of an essay that's meant to get you ready for English 1B. In the essays that we've written for this class, we haven't really taken explicit stances. Like, you are always making an argument when you write the remembering an event, you are arguing that the story is worth reading because something happened to you that was significant, and that a mosquito is going to stalk me this whole video, I think. Um, that you learn something from it significant that mattered to you, but also to your reader. The profile is similar. It's you narrating the experience of somebody else's life, their role in their social setting. And you're saying that there's something significant about why we should learn about what that person does. Explaining a concept is about an idea, not a person, but you're doing the same thing, saying this idea is worth learning. You are making some subtle argument about why we should care about it, but you're not really like writing a persuasive essay in the sense that you are trying to get people to like change their behavior. And a lot of argument is that, right? You're basically telling someone like, hey, it would be best for you or for society as a whole or the environment or whatever if you did these things. And you're basically are trying to like enact change. And that's why we argue. People who argue on Facebook or Twitter are arguing that people should change their minds about how they react to something. And that's what 1B does. In this class, we don't really do that. But essay 4 leads you up right to that point where you analyze two sides of some current debatable idea. And then in the next essay, the first essay of English 1B, you'll actually take a stance. I actually recommend that you choose a topic you want to talk about for this essay that you would want to talk about for the essay 1 of 1B. You don't have to, but it might be kind of interesting because you can do research now about those two sides, and in the future you can actually go through and take a stance and tell people how they should respond to that. So I want to just talk about a few things before I talk about this essay assignment in more detail. I've updated the schedule one more time. I'm not doing it to be confusing. I'm always trying to update things in a way that benefits you and helps you not feel too overwhelmed by the class. So as you already noticed, right, we turned in essay 3 over this past week and on Saturday, and you took the quiz on Monday. And so today is this is a Tuesday night video for me, but you're going to see this sometime Wednesday morning, hopefully not later. Hopefully you see this tomorrow, the 27th. And this is just the introduction to the basic like outline of our purpose of what we're doing with this essay. So you only have a few small assignments left. You have one brainstorm discussion board post that I'm going to ask you to turn in by Saturday morning. Usually I would do it on Friday since our class runs Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you can always turn it in earlier if you'd like to, but I am trying to give people as much space as possible so that they can be confident about the work they're doing here. And I'll put the directions on there and I'll make it a separate announcement, but basically I'm going to ask you to find and read the 2 articles that you're going to base your essay on. Your essay can cite more articles than the 2, but you have to have at least 2 to have side 1 and side 2, side A, side B, however you want to think about it, of some controversial topic. The 2 articles may actually be in response to one another. Author A may have written something and author B may have directly responded, or they may just be taking different sides on the same issue, although the 2 essays are not directly in conversation with one another. Anyways, you want to go through and find 2 articles that you think are suitable, and I'm going to ask you to actually link the 2 articles so I can go and look at them. I imagine most people are going to get something from online. If you have like a paper copy like of an article in a book that you like, that's cool. Just let me know what it is. But I imagine most people are going to find articles online. You're going to want to find these articles from respectable sources that are journalistic, not blogs, not propaganda sites. If you're not sure what counts as propaganda, let me know. If it's a political thing, there's propaganda on both the left and the right. You want to avoid that. I'll let you know I don't consider Fox News a very reliable source, but I wouldn't say InfoWars or addicting info. Like those things that are what we call clickbait, right? That they push extreme ideas because it gives them a lot of traffic online, and that garners them advertising revenue. You want things that feel like they're journalistic, where people are reporting it because they want you to know facts, not necessarily because they have an agenda to push. Almost everybody always has a little bit of agenda, but like they should be professional and subtle about it at least. Anyways, I'm just asking to post the two articles so I can review them. I'm not going to read every one of them up front, but I want to like see where you're coming from. And I want you to basically just explain like what's the general topic of debate that these articles are dealing with. You want to make sure that they are the same topic and not just related to each other. And then I want you to like kind of talk about like what you think you need to do to present those fairly and clearly to your reader, as I basically wrote as a full sentence for you. I moved the last swerve discussion so that you can start writing it on Monday, and then you can post it on Wednesday of week 10. That's also when you're going to post your essay 4 rough draft. I pushed that back a little bit so that you have more time to work on that. And I will finish the class on Friday, explain what I want you to do for the final, and then I'll let you turn in things during finals week. Essay 4, I'm asking you to turn in by Monday morning, our normal 9:30, and then the metacognitive final that I'll describe more about later. It's in the syllabus, but I'll talk about that later. I'm going to ask you to turn that in by Wednesday of finals week. I'm not going to give as in-depth feedback on essay 4 because I want to get grades in quickly for you and for me. I have other responsibilities that I need to do. I need to do assessment for incoming students, and I have to like go and read another 150 essays after I'm done with this. It's whatever, it's a lot. But also, if you do want more feedback than I give you, you're always welcome to ask me. But so I can get grades in quickly, I will give you overview comments about what your paper is doing well or what you could work on. But I'm not going to like go through and like be as much of an editor as I have been before. So I think that's all the little stuff, the housekeeping. Right now I'm grading essay 3. I'll be done with that Thursday morning, and then I'll start working on quiz 4. I'll probably do some of that over the weekend. But you should be flush, as in like have all of your current assignments graded by me by like the beginning of next week. And then I'll just wait for the small things, the brainstorming and the last swerve, and then the peer review. Okay, so that's all that little stuff. So let's talk about essay 4. What does this essay want to accomplish? Well, you're trying to basically, it's more of a report. It's not an argument, right? It should be objective. You're basically doing the first step of an argumentative essay. Before you argue a point, you should lay out the argument at hand. You're not probably going to be the first person ever who makes an argument about something. You're probably always joining a conversation at hand. Abortion, gun control, taxation, charter schools, whatever. Like those conversations have been happening for a long time, whether it be a few months or years or centuries. You're probably not going to be the first person to ever talk about anything, and that's fine. You should choose a debatable idea that matters to you. Don't think that because you're in college, you're supposed to choose abortion or gun control or drug legalization or whatever. It can be something more nuanced. For student athletes, I've had papers talk about whether or not student athletes should be paid, which they currently aren't under, NCAA regulations, right? If you are a gamer, there might be a debate within a gaming community. If you play a specific sport, there might be a rule change. I even heard things like there are musicians who believe that the current scale, the current tuning standard we use, if you know anything about music, you know that like we tune to 440 hertz, and that it used to be different, and people argue about that. Like it can be nuanced stuff like that. It can be about the arts or about scientific interpretations of things. It doesn't have to be like a political issue. It doesn't have to be something that you see on the news that people are always bitching about. Like you can have something that doesn't feel so like catastrophic life or death. It can be stuff about eating or about diet or working out, debates about what's better for you, yoga or aerobics or like high intensity interval training versus weightlifting. It doesn't have to be political. And if you enjoy talking about it, you'll have a better time and probably write a better paper. You have a few different parts of this essay. It should start with a informative overview. Before you explain the two papers you're going to talk about, the two essays, you have to give an overview. Like, what is this debate? When did it start happening? What are some notable moments in this conversation? So basically, you want to define the topic and then contextualize it, place it in some broader, useful social context. So you'll have two main sources, like the two articles that you're working with, whether they talk to each other or if they're just talking the same idea, but like in different ways. But you might want to pull other articles that just help you like set the ground. You'll notice that both the model essays give us just an overview about what's happening before they actually like get into, this is my concept, sign language there. So you might want to use some sources that like just give facts, right? These are the sort of things that just like help teach people who may not know about the debate what they need to know at the ground level before you actually dig into it deeper. You want to make sure that you present both sides of the argument fairly and fully. Being impartial is really important to this essay. I shouldn't know your stance. I don't want you, if you can resist it, I would rather you not talk about gun control, abortion, or drug legalization, because those are really like tired topics for me. Think about like, I've been teaching at UCR since 2008. How many papers do you think I have about like legalizing weed? Now it's legal in California, so I don't have to read that paper anymore, but I read a lot of them. And like, I get it. And like, everyone has a stance, abortion, gun control. I mean, if you do have something that you want to talk about or a subtopic of those ideas, like a specific law that a state passed about, women's reproduction or about, contraception or a specific gun control measure, but don't just like make a pro Second Amendment, pro Second Amendment, anti Second Amendment, pro life, pro choice. That's way too broad. And also it's just, honestly, it's been done. Like you're not going to be the voice that changes that argument probably right now. But if you focus on a smaller, nuanced issue, you might actually have something to contribute to it. It also helps you limit your research. You should care about the debate. When you write it, it should sound like you're interested and that we should be interested. Looking interested in the argument at hand doesn't have to reveal the stance that you would take about that argument. Okay. What you're doing is more than just summarizing the two articles. You do have to summarize the two articles. You assume the people who are reading your paper may not have read the two articles that you're basing it off of. So there is a decent amount of summarizing, which means that you need to work on your paraphrasing and your quoting. You want to paraphrase most of what you read, and you may want to quote select pieces of the essay. But if you quote so much that I might as well have just read the original two essays, then they're not really doing anything. By the way, I posted something about, what was it, chapter 19 from the St. Martin's Guide, about how to paraphrase, summarize, quote, do all that sort of stuff that's really important and will be really important from the rest of this class, 1B and 1C. It's a 10-page chapter. I gave you a lot of the overview about what it's doing, but honestly, you will get a higher grade on this last paper if you read it and you understand those concepts, because they're so important to being a respectable, professional looking, capable researcher. Okay, as you not just summarize, but you analyze the different arguments, what you really want to focus on are like, what are the values that the writers care about? And that means asking, what do they want? What do they want society to do? What do they want from the world, right? What do the writers care about? Also, what do they fear will happen if their stance doesn't win? Who benefits from, doing what they think is best? Gun control. If you are for just complete open carry, everyone should have guns and unlimited access to ammunition and any kind of gun you want to, and there shouldn't be security checks. If you're just like the super libertarian, complete open interpretation of the Second Amendment, you would want to say not just that you think the Constitution allows that, but like, why? What do you want from that being legal and from a society that cares about guns and like approaches them that way? What do you care about? Also, what do you fear? What do you fear would happen if we didn't treat firearm ownership that way? Who benefits if we do this? If we go all in and we're just like a super gun happy, everybody has a gun in their car and on them, and then kids get guns or like whatever, like this super engaged, enthusiastic response to gun ownership. And what do they fear would happen if you don't do that? And then the other side, you know, people who want gun law restrictions or ammo restrictions or type of gun restrictions or background checks. What do they want? Why do they want it? What do they care about? What do they fear will happen if that doesn't happen? And who benefits if they do follow through with what they're arguing, which is to impose those restrictions? You also want to look at the difference between like abstractions versus like real numbers. People who are pro Second Amendment um, may talk about freedom or the Constitution. Those are abstract ideals. I'm not saying they don't matter, but they're abstractions. That's different than talking about like real numbers, like how many people die a year from accidental, shootings or from murder or that, right? You can compare actual statistics versus abstractions, ideals of like freedom, personal responsibility, civic values like that. You also want to think about like where do values overlap? Even though two different arguments have a completely different stance about what we should do, they might still have overlapping values. Like the idea of safety. People who are for gun restrictions, for background checks, whatever, people who are like not as supportive, like say the NRA, they support they probably support it because they believe it will make a safer society. But often people who are also pro Second Amendment and very staunch on, promoting gun rights also believe in safety. They believe that society will be safer because more people will have guns. So although they have completely different understandings about what we should do as a society, oh, here it comes again, they are still sharing the same value, which is a concern on safety. They just have different ideas about what we should do to achieve that safety. So you want to look at where their values overlap as well as where their values differ. Also, their priorities. People can care about the same things, but care about them in different ways. You might say, I do care about safety, but other people care way more. It's like the should we wear a mask in public? The people who say that we should care about safety and they make that like utmost social safety. People who don't want to require masks in public probably still care about safety, but it's lower on their priority. They probably believe more about like personal responsibility, personal freedom. So you can share similar values, but rank them differently. So you might want to look for that in the essays that you're reading. You also want to consider your organizational options. How are you going to organize this? There's really basically only two different ways. You can lay out one argument completely, summarize one argument like front to back, and then you lay out the other one, and then you like do a compare and contrast after. But it's like kind of like here's side A, all the different things, and here's side B. That's kind of overwhelming. I think a lot of people would be better off doing a point by point. Like you talk about one subtopic at a time. Like I said, in gun control, you might want to talk about safety first as a subcategory. Like What do people who are for restrictions, why do they think it's safer? People who think that we should not have any laws prohibiting gun ownership, what do they say about safety? And then like do that thing and then move on to something like, how does side A interpret the Constitution, the Second Amendment? How does side B respond and interpret the Constitution? Like you basically deal with one subtopic at a time and put them both together. Um, if you're if one of the authors, let's call him or her, they author B, is responding directly to author A, or authors A can be a group project. Sometimes there are multiple authors on an essay. That means that author A may not have had a chance to respond to author B. I know I'm throwing out like algebra right now, right? But basically, I write an essay, somebody else responds to it. The person responding to it has the benefit of knowing what I said already, but the person who started that conversation may not have had a chance to write something that gets published, so that there's like a back and forth. You can speculate as to what you think author A would say about author B's points if author B is the person who came later. Anyways, I'm afraid I'm just going to get too confusing if I go down that route anymore, so I'm going to let that go. But if you think about it and that makes sense to you, let me know. And like if you have a question about your actual essays and how they relate to each other, I can talk to you about like some approaches, some strategies to fairly but also comprehensively explain the two sides. So that's what you're doing right now. Your job right now, before you post on the discussion board by Saturday morning, is to decide what topic do you want to look into. And then you have to find 2 articles that are talking about the same issue. Make sure they're the same issue. To go back to gun control one more time, somebody could argue that, we need fewer restrictions on, how much ammo you can buy at a time. But somebody else may be saying that we need more restrictions on background checks. Those both have to do with gun ownership, but they're not the same idea. Or if you talk about something like abortion, one side, the pro-life side might say that certain contraception, like an IUD, is itself like an abortion. Like they may argue against certain contraceptions, and then there might be an article you find that like talks about like what limit, how many weeks should we allow a person to get an abortion before it's like considered a problem. Those both have to do with abortion, but they're not the same topic. So you have to make sure that your articles actually address the same topic, not just a wide category, gun control, drugs, prison terms. Like they actually have to talk about the same thing specifically. Like one last example, if you talk about like student athletes, one side might say we should pay student athletes. The other side says that schools shouldn't even have student athletes. Those both deal with student athleticism, but they're not the same idea. One's about compensation. One's about whether or not a school should even like have programs that divert time and attention away from academics, right? Those are completely different ideas. So you don't want to just talk about the same broad topic, but the same specific issue at hand. Okay, so that's that. I hope that was a pretty useful overview. Choose a topic you like, find 2 articles that take a side. They shouldn't be objective. You're objective, the article should be objective. They should make an argument, and they should be from reputable, trustworthy, respectable sources. And that means like even if you disagree, you probably will disagree with one of the sides, but you should still respect the argument and the person making the argument. If you think that it's just specious, fallacious, just silly, trivial, or propaganda, then maybe it's not a very good argument to use, right? You want to choose 2 sides where you understand like somebody would trust this one and somebody would trust this one, but you believe that they both are worth considering. If you don't respect both sides of an argument a little bit, it's going to be very hard to have an impartial, fair, in-depth analysis of what the 2 sides are trying to argue. Okay, I hope this was useful. As always, if you have questions about how to approach this assignment, or if you are choosing a topic that works, or if your essays themselves are, one last time, conversant with one another, let me know. Otherwise, I assume that you can figure out something that you want to explore and that you can find 2 articles that talk about the same issue in the same way so that you can do an analysis about where their ideas overlap, but also where they just have critical divergences in how they think that we should approach this topic. All right. Hope you're having a good week 9. Let me know if you need anything. Ta ta.